students, welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm Ms. Aruni covering your grade 11 Business and Accounting Studies. So today we are going to discuss about our lesson number 1, the Introduction to Trade and Supporting Services. So I will be using concept maps in order to easily and summarizely teach you what this lesson is about. So when we talk about trade and supporting services, the combined name we can give it is as commerce. So what does really trade and supporting services include? Trade includes the aspects of domestic trade and foreign trade. So trade means in simple the act of buying and selling of goods and services. So the act of buying and selling and good of services in local market will be called as domestic trade, while doing the act of buying and selling in international market will be considered as foreign trade. So both, whether it is domestic trade or foreign trade, will have both retailers and wholesalers, right? So what does the retail and wholesale sector about? So if you could remember in your lesson number 1 also, you have studied the parties involved in a business transaction or how we satisfy our needs and wants. There are manufacturers who sell goods in bulks to wholesalers, and these wholesalers sell them in smaller quantity to retailers, and it is from the retailers that we finally get the goods or services. So there are set of differences in them. Retailers are the ones who sell for final consumption to the final customers, while they are the ones who sell different types of goods, and then their retail price is a bit higher than the wholesale price, and they sell the goods at the listed price, and they are also well aware of the needs and wants of the customers. While in wholesale trade, they are purchasing good for reselling. You can see wholesalers take the goods and they plan to sell it to the retailers. And then they only sell one or limited types of goods as they are taking goods in bulks from the manufacturers. Their price is relatively low compared to the retailer's price because they are going to sell in large quantities and hence will be giving trade discounts. So they are, as I stated before, they will be not selling for a listed price but having a trade discount or a discounted price, and they do not come in contact with the final customers. They will only deal with the retailers. So I hope you understood the difference between retailers and wholesalers in a nutshell. Retailers are the parties who we as customers have direct contact. We get the goods for a listed price and they have a variety of goods to offer. For example, the nearest grocery shop to you will be considered as a retailer, while wholesalers are those that buy goods in bulks from the manufacturers. They store them and sell them in smaller quantities to different retailers. So when they do so, they will be offering trade discounts and they do not have any direct contact with the customers. So that is the difference between those two parties. So as I said, trade is about buying and selling. There are a set of supporting services that facilitate this trade. So what are those facilitative or supportive services? They are the banking service, insurance service, communication service, and the transportation service. So let's talk about each service one by one, right? So if you could remember, you did talk about this banking sector when we were discussing our lesson number 9 in grade 10. So the banking service consists of a set of facilities. So banks offer savings facilities, especially the savings accounts and fixed deposit options. There are credit facilities. As I stated before, you have the overdraft facilities and bank loans. They provide us debit cards and credit cards so we can use e-cash or electronic cash. Then the telebanking facilities, which you have learned before. And also for business purposes, they offer us a specific or a specialized account that is called the current accounts. So we should understand about these current accounts when we are discussing about this banking services in grade 11 lesson, right? So that is the account we have to study specifically, right? So, current accounts are given for the commercial purposes or business purposes. So there are set of advantages, but they're the same things that you've learned on your lesson number 9 when we were discussing about the bank statements and the reconciliation. Those are the same things you can write as the advantages. If I brief it out, the overdraft facility given, the receipt of bank statement summarizing the transactions, the insurance of security, and the direct remittances and the standing order facilities are the benefits of having a current account. Also, the ability to draw checks, right? So, whenever we are opening a current account, we receive a checkbook, right? Where we will be able to write checks. And when we are writing checks, there are a set of things for us to remember. So, first, I will talk about the parties connected to a check using a picture of the check, right? So this is an image of the check. This is taken from your textbook. If I talk about the drawer of the check, it is the particular business or the entity from which the check is taken, right? So if I tell it clearly again, the particular business or the person to whom this checkbook is offered or the one who's owning this checkbook is considered as the drawer, right? So here Prabhat Navaratna will be the drawer of this check. And the drawee will be the bank to whom we ask for a check or where we open our current account. So here it is the Bank of Ceylon. And the payee is the person to whom we are going to pay using a check. So here the payee is Sarat Siriman. So I hope you understood. Drawer will be the business or the person who is having this checkbook. That will be Prabhat Navaratna. Drovey will be the person who's owning the particular account and giving us the opportunity to issue checks. So that will be the Bank of Ceylon. And the payee is the one to whom we are paying this amount through a check. So this is the person here mentioned is Sarat Siriman. And if you could remember, if you have ever seen a check, you have seen there are set of numbers given at the bottom of the check, right? So they are broken into 4 parts. The part A will consist of the check number, B will be the bank number, the C will be the bank branch number, and D will be the bank account number, right? So then you have to remember the parties involved in a check, right? Or how we write a check, to whom we write it, who is the drawer and who is the drawee. Later on, we will be discussing how are we going to draw a check. So when we are writing a check, we call it as drawing a check, right? We have to enter the date. We have to write the name of the payee or in word cash and the amount paid in numbers and words. Then we have to enter the correct signature and later on we have to cross the check, right? So, if you are writing a check or a particular person, I mean, if you are writing means for your exam, if you have to draw a check, you won't be given such a question, but it's better to know, right? First, we write the date and then the payee. If there's no particular person, we write cash, the value in words and in numbers. We definitely write only at the end so that nobody can add more words to it, right? And then we place a signature. And also we do a crossing. So there are 2 types of crossings. That is general crossing, where there are no specific conditions given, or else special crossing with a specific condition. So the need of doing crossing is to improve the security of the check. And later on, there's another aspect where we discuss about endorsing a check. It is when a business person transfer a check that he has received to another party. At the back of the check, he will write his name to ensure that he owned it and then it was he who transferred it. So that is what we call as endorsing a check. Next, we are learning about the insurance. So insurance means the accumulated risk of all into a single insurance fund and sharing the financial losses among participants by collecting premiums from those parties who anticipate different risk and pay compensation for those being affected. So what do we do here? We When we are using insurance, it is done so that we can mitigate the risk or we can have a better compensation if a risk occur. So those people who anticipate risk will have a pool of funds at an insurance company so that if a person has to face a risk, they can get the compensation, right? So to face risk, we need the insurance, and this is the definition of the insurance. So insurances consist of two aspects, that is life insurance where we can insure our life, and then property insurance where we can insure a specific property. It can be a land and building, or else it can be a motor vehicle, right? Even machinery we could add. So there are several parties involved in an insurance. That is the first party, the insured, the person who's obtaining this insurance facility. Then the second party, the insurer, the particular insurance company who's providing us this facility. And the third party will be an external party, an outsider, who will be either affected from a insurable risk. So then we have to learn about the principles of insurance. There are three main principles: the utmost good faith, insurable interest, and indemnity. Utmost good faith means that you have to provide all the correct insurance relevant to your insurance company when you're entering an insurance agreement, right? So if you hide anything, it is not correct, right? It won't be accurate. You won't be a reliable person. So that is why they have this utmost good faith principle. Insurable interest means you should have to have the legal right to be insured or get the insurance facility. You cannot insure the next door neighbor's vehicle. It is not belonging to you. You should have your ownership, right? So therefore, insurable interest means the legal right to insure something. And then indemnity means the payment of compensation commensurate with loss. So that means you cannot make profits from the losses happening. You have to be only able to cover the loss, right? So don't ever think that insurance will help you to gain a profit. You have to have the indemnity principle and only cover the loss, right? So that was the briefs I did on bank service and insurance service. Next, we are going to discuss about the communication service. So, there are two types of communication, that is internal communication, the communication within a business, where we can use memorandums or either chat messages or direct emails or telephone calls or either a particular signals, bells or symbols within an organization. While external, you can use emails, more formal letters, or else phone calls. You can either use video conferencing. Such way, there are different modes of communication even within the different environments in a business. So next, there are certain mediums we use. As I said before, verbally we can conduct communication through written form or using electronic media or the symbols. Right? Verbally, you can either speak directly or through a mobile phone, right? Or either when you're doing video conferencing. Written, you can write a letter or a memorandum. Electronic media, you can use different emails, different other electronic platforms, symbols and signs could be used. Later on, let's discuss about the process of communication. So there will be a sender who will create a message, right? And that will be exchanged through a medium. So these were the mediums I discussed: verbal, written, electronic, or symbols. So from that medium, he will send the particular message given by the sender to the receiver. When the receiver receive it, he will have a particular reaction and then send the feedback to the sender. So if I take an example, imagine a business want to ask about the different prices from a supplier. So he's going to send an email asking, right? Email using the electronic media or medium to the particular supplier asking the prices. So then he will read the email and he will realize, I have to send a particular price quotation to this sender. So he will be sending the feedback, right? So I hope it is probably clear to you. Putte, there won't be a question asking you the different to provide examples, but you have to remember each component of this communication process. And finally, what is the most appropriate medium to select? Though I have taught you there is verbal, written, electronic, and symbols, you have to realize there are certain criteria to follow before selecting the medium. So those 5 criteria are: first one is the appropriateness. So whether you can effectively communicate from that medium, you have to realize, right? Imagine you want to sack a employee. That means you have to remove an employee from the business. Are you going to do that verbally? He will say there is no written evidence, right? So you have to write it in written form. And then the speed. Imagine you want to place an order to get you the particular supplies tomorrow. Are you going to send a letter? It is not that much speedy, right? So with the time being, you have to use either emails or directly contact them through a telephone. And then the cost. Some mediums will be costly than the others, right? Imagine you have to talk to or send a message to all the 150 employees. If you are going to call all the 150 one by one, it will be costly. So it's better to have a written letter or a particular document on the notice board, right? And then the clarity. So every information you use should be clear to them, right? It should be understandable not only to the sender but also to the receiver. And also the medium should be easy for you to use, right? So those are the things you have to understand on the communication service. And we are coming to the last service, that is the transportation service. So if there's a question asking what are the elements, these are the 4 elements you have to remember: the way, the transportation medium, the power, and the terminals, right? So when we discuss about the way, that means the particular route of which we are going to transport. The transport medium means whether we are using the road, the railway, the waterways, or the airways. The power means what are the different modes or the means of get generating power, and the terminals means what are the end which we are planning to go. So whether it is particular transportation mediums, whether it is road, railway, waterway, or airways, you have to consider the advantages and disadvantages and then plan the particular transportation. Imagine you want to send goods from Colombo to Negombo, right? So one might think it's easy to send goods from through the road, right? Either from a lorry, you plan out, it's easy. What about the damages, the time spent on traffic? Maybe if you catch the early morning train and have your goods sent, you can do it more reliably, right? So that is why you have to consider the safety of the goods, the speed, and then whether it is the cost, and whether it is effective, and whether it is reachable to the destination. All these things should be considered when you're selecting each transportation medium. So hope you enjoyed learning with us. I have taken a real short real short summary. So please go through your lesson and realize that I have only taken the most important things. Thank you.